Celtic somehow extended the lead at the top of the Scottish Premiership despite losing 2-1 to Hibs at Easter Road yesterday. But the news that's really catching all the headlines is a VAR goal, a disallowed goal, where someone, it sounds, Paddy, like someone's guessed at where the ball was before finding itself at Daizen Maeda's feet for what would have been an equaliser for Celtic. This is Tino with the Final Whistle Show, joined here by Paddy on a Sunday morning. Paddy, your initial take on the game, I guess, but really on that hot talking point as well.
Yeah, not just someone, Tino, Alan Muir, a familiar name within the Celtic world, and some of the decisions he's made over the years that have not went in our favour. I think overall, yeah, as you say, we've extended the league somehow, which I'm not going to cry about at all. I had an idea the performance would be a difficult one yesterday, and I thought that we were going to really feel it. That was a Hibs team that have got a bit of confidence about them just now. They've been playing, as I say, not a specific style of football, but they've been a lot more confident with each other on the park, and really took the game to Celtic. And you could see we were a little bit up against the ropes for the first half. I thought that took a bit of time for the players to really figure out the system we were trying to play, what we were up against, what they were trying to do in terms of marking. They get the early goal, which obviously meant that the momentum was with them as well. So it took us to the second half really to try and respond. But in terms of the goal, I'm sure we'll come on to it. I just don't know how you can make that decision. I just don't understand it. I've seen stills where it looks in. I've seen stills where it looks out. I've seen stills where you can't see the ball because Alistair Johnston's leg. The decision came from a still where you can't see the ball and you can't see the line. You can see Alistair Johnston's leg and you can see that the ball has been played from his foot. And that's the one that went with. I just can't get my head around it. And for me, we're obviously hearing about Norway binning VAR. I think we need to do the same, Tino. If we cannot afford the same stuff as what the Premier League has in terms of goal line technology, in terms of more cameras in the stadium, what is the point in having it? It is a cheap version for the Barras. They need to get rid of it.
Yeah, and let's revisit it then just as we get to that point in the show. But my overall feeling just now is you say, how can they make that decision? They can't. They cannot conclusively make that decision. And we'll get into all the detail. There's some more images that have come out today. One from a fan in the stand who was right on the byline. Various things. Let's get to it at the right moment, Paddy, but it's definitely the big talking point this morning and since the final whistle yesterday. In terms of Celtic, a few changes. 3 guys drop out. Let me get my head round who it was. Taylor come back in. We need to talk about Greg Taylor. Luke McCowan came in and Adam Ida came in. And as it happened, all 3 of them were whipped at half-time. It's a, I don't know, kind of ruthless move to take them all out the final line at half-time, but that's the job. That's what Brendan Rodgers needs to do, and he's shown that he can be ruthless when required. What was your take on the first half from them and the decision to hook them at half-time?
Yeah, I listen, I think we need to look at these decisions. We need to think about it's 45 minutes to get ourselves back in the game. We're sitting 2 down. I've nothing against that. I think if it goes in 1-0, then maybe they get another 15 minutes. But it looked like a bit of a torrid time for Greg Taylor. I don't think there was much coming from McCowan or Ida as well. Just off days in that term. I think that you've got to look at how we play from out the back. If the service isn't coming from there, it's very unlikely that those more advanced are going to be involved as much. I actually thought it was a bit of an off day for a lot of players, not including just those 3. I thought Austin Trusty was a bit all over the place. Don't think it was Nicholas Kuhn's best game in a Celtic jersey as well. Thought he was in and out. And also in the dying moments, for me, I thought it got a bit desperate for Marlon Engels as well. We need to see a wee bit more composure. I just thought that he was trying to put everything into the box, but forgetting there was a first man in front of him. I don't know how many times he hit the first player. So, listen, a real learning curve for them. That it's not a foregone conclusion that you walk away, you run away with this league. There are going to be difficult tests throughout the season. But I can also sense that the second half, the performance definitely upped. I thought Jota was a real nuisance coming on. Probably, for me, one of the only players that can head up the road with his head held high. I thought he brought a bit of life to us. And actually, if you go and get that goal, if you go and get that equaliser, you're looking to go on and win the game. So much was the difference in the second half from how we played. So, yeah, it's a tough one for Celtic yesterday, but I have to say, like, we are going to have these moments in the season, and we normally have those moments after a big European game. We've done well considering the games that we've come back from after Europe. We've played very convincingly in those fixtures. So for it to happen in this way, for us to somehow extend a league lead at the top, I'll take it as a one-off, Tino.
It's kind of where I've been at, Paddy. I've been bouncing about in my head since yesterday. But as you say, the facts of the matter are we lose by a goal. Rangers go on to somehow lose by 2 goals and we extend the lead on goal difference. So in terms of the bigger picture, it's all fine and there's no concern here. You and I done the pre-match, we done a show on Friday night, and one of the kind of taglines, lines that we were running with was 10 games from the treble. That absolutely applied, and it is now 9 games from the treble. That's not changed. So the lie of the land is as you were. Bigger picture, we're absolutely fine. I also don't expect Celtic in the running to now be as poor as we were in that first half. And I do think human nature is a thing, and it's understandable. It's frustrating, of course it is, but it's understandable that players would potentially be a wee bit flat coming from the Allianz Arena and everything that Tuesday night offered, and the adrenaline and the highs and the tension and the ups and downs of that night, to what is a run-of-the-mill fixture at Easter Road. With all respect to Hibs, and I don't mind Hibs at all as a club, and fair play to them for celebrating their win and all that stuff, but it's human nature that the levels drop, and by and large it was the same players, so there's a bit of fatigue. And I know they're fit young guys, and I know they trained in Munich on Wednesday morning to try and keep himself at optimal levels for this one. But the motivation is different, and do you allow for that? I know they're pros, I know they play for Celtic, there's everything else that goes with that, but do you allow for that human nature on occasion?
I do, because I do think that, our manager said it himself at the end of the transfer window, the squad's lighter, and I think that we need to take that on board. We need to remember that it's not just the 11 that started on Tuesday night. It's the fact, it's the 2 that come in, it's the travelling involved, it's the turnover to a game on the Saturday. You could see that a lot of them were on their last legs, and I get that. I totally understand that. There's also a little element of maybe those coming in a bit peeved that they've not started on Tuesday as well. So the motivation might not fully be there from them as well. That's football. It is up to a manager to try and get a rise out of them. Now listen, I think he's going to give them a bollocking at half time, whether it's 1-0 or 2-0. And I think obviously, as I say, the second goal changes things. He has to make the subs then. He has to pull those off that are maybe just not contributing enough. That's not good enough. That's the side where I'm a little bit like, you take your opportunities when you get them. You go and make it a very difficult game, but you also need the rest of your team to be playing at that similar level. So I think it was a bit of an all-over performance from Celtic, and I don't really like singling those guys out, the 3 that have come in, but ultimately he went to his strongest team.
That's the very message. He could have made a number of changes at halftime, if truth be told, but he's basically said to himself, no, I'm going back to the team that performed strongly in Munich, and he's made those 3 changes. And there's a fair point coming in here from Sanfran, who says that Ida, Taylor and McCowan didn't have the fatigue reason. They didn't start the game.
Absolutely, and I'm not saying they did, Sanfran, don't worry.
Yeah, it's a valid point that they should have been fresh for it. And as you say as well, Paddy, they could have been a wee bit miffed at not playing more of a role in Munich, but they're pro footballers, they're very, very well paid, and I'm not just pinning yesterday on them, there was more to it, but you can't afford guys to go in the huff if that's what was happening. And I'm not convinced it was, to be honest with you, but they certainly didn't perform alongside a number of teammates. In terms of the match action, Paddy, we obviously got off to the worst possible start. And I listened to David Gray talking after the game, and he was saying that in the last 3 times Celtic had played Hibs, we'd gone a goal up within the first 5 minutes. They done to us what we do to so many other sides. We come out the traps and we usually go into the lead, and instead it's them that take the lead in the second minute. And it's a fairly cheap goal, well executed from Hibs, poor from Celtic. Yeah,
very much so. And I think it's a well taken goal from Campbell's, a good finish. But again, it just seems a little bit slack. It almost seems as if the guys are just getting off the plane from Munich and getting onto the park, the way that they kind of set up for it. But I think for me in those moments, that's where, we are so used to putting teams on the back foot. Just wonder if there's been a little bit of that they're just not expecting it. We've conceded a couple of goals like that in that back line. And I think that, it's how you react after it. They looked a little bit shaky from the moment the goal went in. So definitely something for us to keep an eye on going down the line, especially when it comes to the Scottish Cup games. But yeah, it just looked a little bit too easy for Hibs to get in there. And as I say, it's a good finish for Campbell.
Yeah, and Celtic have prided themselves on clean sheets. I think Kasper Schmeichel's get 19 in the league, something like that, 19 out of now 27 games. And he'll have been annoyed as anyone. And with any goal in football, unless it's an individual bit of brilliance and a guy, I don't know, runs for the halfway line and you just can't do anything about it, there's always people that you can point the finger at and say, he could have done this better, he could have done that better, he could have done that. And there's a few that are in the mix for Celtic. Somebody says that McGregor's at fault for allowing the runner to come off him. Trusty seems out of position. Taylor will always get it. That's where we found ourselves, and he seemed to be a wee bit out of sorts position-wise as well. But you've got to take these things collectively. And I was talking after the game in Munich, Celtic very generally as a squad of players, they seem to win and lose as a team. And they've got to take responsibility as a team. And I'd like to think and hope that nobody's in there pointing fingers saying, that's Trusty's fault or that's Thingy's fault. As a team, they've not dealt with that well. But it just leaves you on the back foot from the start, Paddy. And, despite the 3 changes, it's a strong Celtic 11. It's 11 that have proven themselves capable, absolutely at domestic level here in Scotland. And they should have been good enough to drag themselves back in during that first half, but we just did not get going. No, we really didn't. As I say, it was a bit stop-start. I think talking in the chat yesterday, and one of the boys were saying that Ida wasn't involved as much. I think like 4 touches, all of them were pretty poor, and I can see that. I can understand where they're coming from. I also have to kind of think about the service coming to him. The positions he was receiving the ball in wasn't the greatest as well. We weren't getting ourselves up the park. Hibs had pinned us in quite a bit yesterday. And they had their chances. I seen one of the comments for Sanfran there. Kasper had some great saves, actually, which we weren't expecting at all. It's almost as if it took us a bit of time just to kind of come to life and be ready for what was going to be a bit of a scrappy game. I think we kind of said on the pre-match it was going to be a tough one. We would be leggy. And I think that's a difficult one for a lot of players to come back from. Like you say, it's coming back down to earth with a bang, and you're back in at the bread and butter of the league. I don't like using that as an excuse. I can just see for the efforts that they put in on Tuesday night, a lot of them were on their last legs. And then we're talking about the 3 coming in to try and freshen things up. There's only so much you can do when there's maybe 8 others on the park that are still feeling leggy from that game on the Tuesday night. So it was very telling for me. Is it a good enough excuse? No, I don't think it is. I think we should still be able to beat anyone in the league, regardless of the games that were played. But you could definitely see Tuesday took its toll on the players. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I think my general feeling on it was that Taylor was poor, and I don't know if he's now got half a foot out of Celtic Park. His head is maybe elsewhere. Adam Maeda, he had a couple of opportunities to do better. There was one he should definitely have squared across the box. There was one where his touch let him down, went through on goal when he got.
The one that he should have squared it was probably the decision maker for Brendan Rodgers to take him off. I think, get your head up there. It's albeit I know he's a striker. We want strikers to be selfish in a sense, but he was in no position to try and make a goal out of where he was. And there was 2 players screaming for the ball. He needs to get his head up there.
Yeah, I thought he could have done a lot better there and on a couple of other occasions. I do feel it was a wee bit harsh on McCowan. He's been landed with that. Stigma's a bit harsh, but basically he got the start and he was one of the 3 that was whipped off. I don't think he was quite as poor, but he wasn't at his best either, and that's the way it goes. And Luke McCowan's obviously had a different journey, towards Celtic, coming through Dundee where he was captain and top man, basically. And this will be part of his ongoing development at Celtic. I'm not concerned about Luke McCowan. I don't know if he'll ever be the top level Champions League player, But I think he's a very good player for us, and I think he could be very important domestically. There is a further comment as well. I'll try and find it, but basically, yeah, again, it's San Fran saying that Bernardo has also been a big loss, and I would agree with that. There's a comment I want to go to just now, and thanks to everyone who continues to comment and join in here in the show. Remember, you do need to be a member of the channel to do so. There's a link to do so in the show notes, and then you can comment and ask questions throughout these live sessions. The one I want to bring up, Paddy, is from MT Celts, and he says, Taylor and McCowan mentally not there. I said in the build-up to the Bayern game that if you drop players like Taylor, Ida, that got us there, it would affect the dressing room. Boom, I was right. I've got to disagree, and that's part of the game here, MT. That's where it goes. Would you rather be started Taylor than Schlupp in Munich? Would you rather be started Ida than Maeda, who proved so effective and so key to getting the goal in Munich? This is the game. This is modern football. This is a squad game, and you cannot not drop players based on thinking, I might hurt their feelings here. It might rock the boat. The manager's job is to keep harmony in the camp, absolutely, and that's not easy. But you need to go with your best team for whatever the occasion may be. The best team v Munich might not necessarily be the best team against Hibs yesterday or Aberdeen on Tuesday night or Hibs in the Scottish Cup next month. Horses for courses and all that kind of stuff. But you can't not drop players because you think somebody might be a wee bit upset and it might rock the boat, Paddy. You've got to go with what you think is the right team for the right occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand where MT's coming from in terms of, are those the figures that are maybe, a bit stroppy after being dropped? It still can't be the excuse. You're playing for Celtic. You need to understand that you earn the right to feel stroppy in that sense. And I think that for Greg Taylor, there's not enough credit in the bank. We've seen it time and time again in terms of Europe. He's let us down. Domestically, he's been excellent for us, but there's been shaky moments in domestic games as well. For Adam Maeda, it's not his jersey yet. He's still got a bit of work to do, and I do see a player there in Adam Maeda, but I don't think you dictate if you're the starting striker at this point of the season. I still think you've got a lot of work to do, and especially knowing that there will be another striker coming in the summer window as well. I think I get the point, but it certainly does not mean that Brendan Rodgers sits there and thinks, no, I can't drop them because they've got unhappy. You need players unhappy. You need players that want to fight and want to get into the starting 11 and cement their place, make sure that they're the main man every week. And if they're not, if there's any hint or any consideration for other players to come into their position, then in this Celtic team and how successful we are and how well we've been playing this season, that's not on the manager, that's on the player to really go and have a think about, why am I not getting the nod? What am I doing differently? What do I need to work on? And I think we've seen it with Greg Taylor time and time enough, in my opinion. But for Adam Maeda, this maybe is an early part of his learning curve in this sense. But if he wants to keep that jersey, he needs to up his performance.
He really does. And, there's a real opportunity for him. As you say, a striker absolutely should, and I think will come in the summer. But in the meantime, between now and May time, Adam Maeda is going to get so many opportunities, so many starts, and he needs to find consistency. We know he's got it. He's had so many big moments for Celtic. Maybe most recently the big performance against Villa, 2 brilliant goals on the night. You've got to do it in all the other games as well. That's the thing. You can't just pick and choose when you turn up, and that's going to be the ongoing challenge for Adam Maeda and the rest of his teammates. I just want to say very quickly on Greg Taylor that I do feel for him to an extent, because as a footballer, you've got a lot to contend with, and it doesn't just come down to your ability. And Greg Taylor, has a certain level of ability, and he's absolutely comfortable, and he's done a brilliant job for Celtic in the 5-6 years he's been here domestically. I repeat that he's won 10 trophies for Celtic. So many left backs have come and gone, and he's seen them all off. But I think at the moment he's reaching the end of his Celtic career, and the stick he takes must be very hard to deal with. It just comes down on him. And he was poor yesterday. There's no dressing that up. But I just think he may feel he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I don't know. It's a tricky one. I think now, though, it's got to be a case of Schlupp being your starting left back. And he looks fit and strong enough to be that guy, by the way. And maybe Taylor comes in sporadically. I was really surprised to see him start. Maybe the manager thought he'd get a reaction out of him, and it didn't happen. And I do think, from a player's point of view, when the clock's running down, when it feels like the full fan base is against you, it can be hard to perform, and there's no getting away from that.
But listen, Tino, there's only one person to blame for that being the kind of feeling here, and I'm I'm not singling out Greg Taylor in that sense. I think he's been badly advised in terms of we're hearing the rumours of a £25,000 a week contract being what he wanted. In terms of potentially wanting out the big chasm, which is Glasgow, and the spotlight being on you at all times and pulling away from that side of it. Wanting to maybe follow suit and look at the monies available down in England with the likes of what Ayer and Ryan Christie have done. I don't think those things pop up for no reason. I do think there is a bit of Greg Taylor that thinks that he deserves that, and the only way for him to stay at Celtic is if he's given £25,000 a week. He's not a player that would start every week for me, and there's no chance we're paying 25 grand a week for somebody to sit on the bench. So Celtic have had to stand firm. I think our manager was very, very clear about this in the summer, is that we were looking at a new left back, and Greg would need to come to terms that he's not going to be that first team player every week. He'd need to learn that he's going to be part of the squad, and I just don't think he wants to do it. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But you need to then be clever in your sense of, well, do I want to still play here? Do I want to move on? What do I want to do? And I find it interesting that there was no one in for him in January. We keep hearing the Zagreb talk. We keep hearing that that's the potential move. Zagreb could have came and put the contract offer in, and yeah, all right, Celtic probably wouldn't have sold considering the left back position we're in. But again, I still think we would have heard something by now. So I do think he's been badly advised. I do think that it is his decision who his agents are. So it's on Greg Taylor, this one for me. And yeah, I'll thank him for everything he's done for Celtic, but I won't forget the bad games he had as well, Tino. And like I say, in Europe, it's not just one game.
Yeah, I can't argue, Paddy. Can't argue at all. I'm just putting up the opposite view, or just bouncing it around a wee bit. We've got a valid point as well from Fred Williams, good friend of the show. He says, hold on, Tino. Taylor has seen off all left backs as they were all honking for us, not because he was mega. Yeah, it's a valid point, but you can only, in football, you can only play who's in front of you, and you can only compete with who's in for your position. And for whatever reason, Greg Taylor has been the best, despite the efforts of Celtic to bring in guys like, let me see, Laxalt and Bernabe, and it's a sketchy list. Who? Bolingoli and others of his ilk. But yeah, that's what happened with Greg Taylor. I'd finish on saying that I do think he has been poorly advised. He's had a good time at Celtic. He's earned well at Celtic, and I wonder if there's been, it's not fair for me without knowing the figures to say there's been greed there, but I wonder if there's been maybe too many demands from his agent, and maybe he'll be regretting not signing something earlier. And there's different people saying they've got inside info that no contract was put on the table. No contract is put on the table till you reach that verbal agreement and you realise you're on the same page, and then you can get down to the crossing T's and dotting I's. So I don't know. It just seems it's not worked out, and that's another situation that Celtic are being frustrated by. I mean, agents, because the manager's talked about it frequently about the young players as well. Agents, they do. They're a necessary evil in the game. They're just part of the game, but they often look out in the best interest of the agent, not necessarily the best interest of the player, and certainly not the club. So that's where we find ourselves. Paddy, let's get back to the game. So it's Josh Campbell that opens the scoring right at the start of the game. He's the guy that then gets the second, and it's a crucial second for Hibs, right on the stroke of half-time. If we think Celtic could have done better for the first goal, they could certainly have done better for the second, and there's plenty going on there, isn't there?
There really is. Very easy cross in, and I think that we've kind of got to look at, the fact that there's three defenders, one Hibs player. He's found it easy to manipulate that space. Some of the boys that were at the game yesterday were asking me if Schmeichel could come for it. I can see the argument, but I think if you've got three defenders in front of you, you really shouldn't have to. You really shouldn't have to, Tino. I think it hangs up near enough as well, personally. So I don't know where we're at. We're watching the ball. We're not watching the player, and that's schoolboy stuff. Yeah,
it really is. And Josh Campbell's not the biggest guy, by the way. He's a good competitor, and he played his part for Hibs and then some, but you've got a few guys around him there, maybe Trusty being the biggest. Trusty is a big lad, and he wins the most, the majority of his headers, but Celtic have got to be dealing with that better collectively, and that's what I'm saying. It's, team effort and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not saying that was on Trusty or CCV or whatever, but as a group, they need to do better. And the stats came up there from Pat McLaughlin, just overall bigger picture stuff for a second. Celtic lost 2 games in the whole of last calendar year, 2024. We've now lost 4 for this year. I need to double check that. 4 for this year. And I'm not concerned right now that it's become a pattern. There's different things at play, and you're expected to maybe lose to a team like Bayern Munich. There was the off day at Ibrox, and then obviously Villa's a different challenge in Hibs yesterday. So there's different reasons and rationale for those games. But you don't want to be losing too many more, and it's only February.
No, that's true. That's true. I think we kind of spoke about this when we had those results, especially against Rangers, that we've put ourselves in such a strong position this season, Tino, that it's not to get complacent, but there will be an element of the players looking at the challenge and looking at the next steps of this season. Still 13 points clear. They'll want to go and wrap up the league, but I do think that could become a period in between us winning the league into the end of the season of hopefully some experiment with our youth team that can come in and try and get a bit of a taste of first team football, whilst keeping the starting 11, the strongest 11 fit and ready for the cup games and heading towards hopefully another treble. So it's the motivation. I get it. It's probably been sucked out a little bit in terms of leaving the Champions League, being put out of the Champions League is a big mental factor for a lot of the players. But I tell you what, performances like that yesterday will get them. They won't like it. They don't like to be beaten. You can tell that as a team. The response is normally a strong one when we have been. So I think that we just kick on. We're going to have a difficult game on Tuesday night against Aberdeen. That's 2 wins in the bounce for them. They'll be feeling a little bit more like themselves from the beginning of the season. So they need to wake up. They need to get ready for it.
Yeah, and the big plus is we're at home on Tuesday, and that's probably what Celtic need right now, just to get back to Celtic Park and regroup and try and kick on. Final point at the moment from Pat is that we've not won 5 games in a row since October, November time. And again, very generally, I'm not concerned that it's becoming a pattern and this is a side on the down. Quite the opposite, actually. I think this is a Celtic side on the up. And with the right tweaks and adjustments and additions in the summer, we'll continue to get better. And I suppose such as the high standards and expectations at Celtic, that if you lose a couple of games, shock horror, football team loses a game. That's part of football. It's the ups and downs. You can't put out invincible trebles every season. But it's the stats are the stats and all that kind of stuff. It's valid to an extent. But I do think, generally speaking, you can frame stats whatever way you want to read, positively or negatively. I think looking at it objectively, this is a Celtic side on the up. And I don't have any great concerns over patterns of that nature. Paddy, getting into the second half, the hope is that we come out all guns blazing and, Jota, Schlupp and Rio Hatate are brought back into the fold. What was your take on how we responded in the early part of the second half?
Yeah, I thought we come back into it as soon as we possibly could, really, but I would have liked to get the first goal a little bit quicker and give us a little bit more of a platform to work off of. I thought we looked a little bit more like ourselves. I thought Jota, as I say, was a real nuisance down the left-hand side. Gave them a lot of things to think about, and we really took the second half to Hibs. And as I say, on the whole of the game, come the end of the second half, we definitely deserved at least a draw. For me, after a really poor first half, I thought we were the team that were looking to go and maybe even get the draw, maybe even go and grab the 3 points, Tino. But we've left it too late. And listen, I also think that there's a dubious call for a potential penalty as well for Hibs. That when we talk about obviously the VAR goal, I could understand why people will say with these things even themselves out. I thought that that's a potential penalty, and actually I thought that Cameron Carter-Vickers looked slightly off it yesterday as well. And I thought you get yourself caught in no man's land. So I do think we were fortunate with that chance for Hibs there with a potential penalty. But I did think I seen some character. I did think I seen a little bit more life put into us and a real determination to try and claw it back. And they were close to doing that. Good goal from us. Well worked. He's just he's about everywhere, isn't he? The wee man. He's had a great season for us this year, and long may that continue. But he'll be gutted he never got his second.
Yeah, he's got loads of different goals in his locker, Daizen Maeda. He's got the industrious type goal of yesterday where he just doesn't give up. Something that looks like a lost cause. He kind of follows it in and just gets that vital touch. He's got the goal the other week where he's lifted it over the goalkeeper. He's got, the sharp reaction against Bayern Munich at Celtic Park. He's got lots of different goals in his locker. He's been phenomenal. But we've covered that, he's been the main man absolutely in recent weeks, and it looks set to continue. His mindset is incredible. And yeah, he'll have thought he'd done enough to get an equaliser for Celtic, and obviously that wasn't to be. But over the piece, I do feel that Celtic were worthy of the draw, but you don't always get what you deserve in football. Hibs had the majority of the first half, we had the majority of the second half, and that's the way it rolls out. There is a bit of stick for Jota in terms of him not squaring the ball. I don't have a problem with what he done. I thought it just didn't open out to get it to Kuhn. He'd have loved to roll it for a tap-in, but as you watch the way the play goes, and he does so well to get to the byline and beyond, everything closes in, and it's almost, in my opinion, like all he can do is try and get the shot away. He does get the shot away. It's by the goalkeeper, and Bashiri does brilliantly to block it on the line. I don't mind him doing what he done. I thought he earned the right to get a shot on goal, and it was potentially as good an option as anything else. What was your take on that, Paddy, and Jota's overall inclusion?
I think when you look at the two Hibs players, one moving onto the line and one still kind of around that 6-yard box, the pass actually narrows the goal down. If he plays it out to Kuhn, I think that he's beat the keeper. He's just not got his head up. He's just not got his head up and seen that Bashiri was moving onto the line. I think that's the frustrating bit as a fan. And then it looks easy if the pass is for Kuhn to then potentially slot it in, who maybe has a little bit more time to put his head up as well. I can totally get both arguments, but after a run like that, I want to put it in the net.
Maybe that stunning mop of hair got in his eyes at the vital moment as well. But yeah, that was one of not a lot of chances. Celtic certainly dominated, but we weren't peppering the goalie or anything like that. But we were certainly in the ascendancy and looking good. Maeda's goal to make it 2-1 is in the 68th minute. There's decent time at that stage. You'll have heard Lenny in commentary saying Celtic will get another big chance, and didn't really materialise over the piece. We kind of, as you say, maybe kind of took the wrong decision at times. Arne Engels maybe looking to get into the box too often. Kuhn having a relatively rare off day by his own high standards, and a few other things of that nature. Again, though, Paddy, let's revisit the big talking point. So everyone, I'm sure, listening or watching will have seen the moment, but basically we find ourselves in a good position, high up in the right-hand side. Arne Engels puts it to the byline for Alistair Johnson to do what he so often does in overlap, or underlaps actually on this occasion, to then whip the cross in. And it looks like he's just done enough. He whips the ball across, the keeper spills it, and who else but Maeda to react quickest and volley into the net. It's given on the field, so the ref, Stephen McLean, he gives it. The Lionel, who's closest to it, he's okay with it. Celtic make their way back up the park, but then we hear VAR has got involved. And specifically, as you say, Alan Muir, who's become infamous in terms of some of his VAR decisions. Some real bad ones for Celtic and for other clubs, actually. Yeah. And maybe that's one in general that the SFA and Willie Collum want to look at. But the bottom line is here, Paddy, the SFA confirmed shortly after the game that the angle they took was from a camera in line with the 18-yard line. So not in line with the byline where the ball goes out, in line with the 18-yard line. You're therefore admitting that the technology is flawed, or at least unsuitable for purpose. You can't make that judgment call. I've seen angles where it looks absolutely in. I've seen a couple that looks like it might be out. I've not seen any that tell me it's conclusively out, and nor have the SFA, if I'm being frank. Alan Muir hasn't seen anything that tells you it's conclusively out. And as I said earlier on there is a clip that's just doing the rounds this morning. It'll be viral by the time we're finished, from, I think it's a Hibs fan in their main stand, looking down that line at the very moment Johnson whips it across, and it looks clearly in play. Now, that's an angle the SFA and Alan Muir didn't have available to him, so therefore he can only make the call on the ones that he's got. And I think he's guessed at it, Paddy. And I think Brendan Rodgers thinks he's guessed at it too.
I think that all of us can tell he's guessed at it. It is incredible. And I'm laughing at some of the comments on Twitter where it's the ball's definitely out, and in the image you're getting, you could get a better picture for a Nokia 3310, It's insane to say that you can make a call on that, and they have went and done that. They have went and said, yeah, definitely ball out, to make that call on VAR. That's the black and white of it. What isn't black and white is if the ball is out or not. So what's going on? What is happening there? It's it's really, really bad refereeing, and I think that a manager, no doubt, will probably get pulled up for saying that Alan Muir is guessing, because you're not allowed to have that comment against the referees. You've got to support your referee in this league. But when they're making decisions like that, I can understand why there's been so many different cases, not away from, not just Celtic, not even just Rangers. There's been so many comments made left, right and centre this season from other managers that have got themselves into trouble. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, Norway have just binned it. I think we really need to be looking at it. VAR's a great idea if you've got the technology to back it up, and we don't. And actually, when you're looking at 2-3 minutes to make big decisions on the park, the time that's taking players away from actually keeping on their toes, keeping warm during the game, the amount of injuries clubs are going through each season, it all adds up. The difficulty it has as a spectator of the game when you're celebrating a goal and then you're turning around waiting on it going up on the big screen that there's going to be a VAR decision, sucks the fun right out it. And I would be so happy if we get rid of it. I really would.
I would be of a different opinion in that at the moment it's not fit for purpose, but I would prefer them to get the right level of VAR in and the right calls at the right time. At the moment, it's just very disjointed, and we've spoken previously at length on this and described the product here as VAR light. It's the as you say, the Barras version, the cheap version of it. And if all the technology is not available, and you might want to include goal line technology at some point into the mix, if you're looking to upgrade things, then you will get more calls right than wrong. And generally speaking, I don't want to turn it into a Celtic thing. I don't believe Celtic were cheated, inverted commas. That's not my take on it. And I know a few of the guys in the comments feel like that, and that's fine and fair if that's how they feel. I just feel it's incompetence across the board, because sometimes when these things are flagged up, if you're watching this, the comments on social media and otherwise, there's St Mirren fans and Hibs fans and Aberdeen fans and every fan saying, well, what about the one against us last week and these various decisions? We just don't watch them. We just don't focus on them. So we think it's just us. And it's not. I think Alan Muir's made a number of bad decisions against a number of clubs, and there's various things going on of that nature. The thing I do like about it is that Brendan Rodgers is strong on it. And you're right, Paddy, sometimes all you'll get for that is a slap on the wrist and maybe a touchline ban or a fine or similar. But for me, all he's doing is telling the truth. Yeah. Based on the information we've all got at hand, what's going to be really telling is the VAR review that Willie Collum does every month. I don't know when the next one is due and when this one will feature, but the audio from that's got to be interesting, because someone made the point yesterday, if it's anything like, I think it's out, or it might just be out, or anything fluffy, anything less than definitive, then you can't give it. You can't give it for, it might be out, so we need to call it off. And what you've got is a situation where to overturn the referee's on-field decision, it has to be 100%, has to be bang on, factual. Yeah. And as I say, and I'm repeating myself now, that can't be factual. So for Brendan Rodgers to call that out on what it is, he doesn't have Alan Muir doesn't have the stills and the images to call that, then Brendan Rodgers is only saying what everyone else is saying. And
it's actually been deemed as a factual overturn as well.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
that's the term that's been given next to it. So, I mean, it just creates more of a talking point, I suppose. Listen, I'm seeing some of the comments in terms of be careful what we wish for. Listen, I'm not against what it has brought for Celtic in terms of a bit more of a level playing field, but we've got the cheap version of it, and actually it can cause more harm than what it's worth at this point in time. And for me, as I say, as a football fan, you're sitting in a stadium now for what, maybe sometimes over 2 hours, because there is that incompetence of them working the technology correctly, not having the right angles, guesswork. It is sucking the fun out of the game completely, and I think that it's starting to actually have the same effect down in England. I think there was a Champions League game where they were standing for 4 minutes waiting on a decision. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. If it's not clear, then the original decision stands. Simple as that. We can't go down to these fine lines. We can't go down to these fine areas that they're trying to see if they've got the equipment to give them that answer. Clearly, they don't have it in Scotland. And I think until we do have the correct equipment to even be anywhere near the same level as what we're seeing across the continent, we shouldn't be using it.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. And I would say that at the moment, there's still a long way to go. VAR in theory is a great idea. It should cut out all these different poor decisions. But human nature will come into it, and human decision making is still, subjective decisions are still a part of that. And yeah, it remains to be seen what it'll look like moving forward. But there's absolutely improvements to be made, and then some. This is going to rumble on, Paddy. This will be the news for the next few days, and we'll certainly cover more of it in the weekly show tomorrow, Monday night. I think it's me, you, and Miff, TBC. So we'll look forward to chatting. He's back. Where's he been? So we'll chat that through and then some tomorrow. In terms of the bigger picture, as I say, Celtic can't get the equaliser and we fall 2-1. And as I say, good luck to Hibs. But Celtic now need to respond in the way that we have seen them respond. It's, for me now, it's less about what happened yesterday. What's the reaction? And I mean from everyone, from the manager, from the guys like Greg Taylor and Adam Ida and Luke McCowan, who are, we've just discussed, who were poor performers on the day amongst some of their teammates. What do you do about it? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Oh, that's us out of Europe. That's us had a loss. That's us lost 4 times this calendar year, etc. Or do you show what you're made of and show you've got the mentality to be a Celtic player and to kick on? And on that, Paddy, it's a pretty relentless run of fixtures that we've got coming up. We've got Aberdeen on Tuesday night, as discussed. We've then got St Mirren away from home, and they'll be buoyant after their win against Rangers. We've then got Hibs again, and it's at home in the Scottish Cup, Sunday the 9th of March, and that's a big one, and that's an ideal opportunity for Celtic to show that yesterday was a one-off result against Hibs. And then you've got Rangers on the 16th of March, Paddy's Day weekend, followed by an international break kicks in, and you've got Hearts on the other side of it. So it's tough games, tough fixtures, but that's part of life at Celtic.
Big time. I think what will be welcome is some breaks in between. I think getting some time in the training ground is going to be massive for these players, and just kind of for that final push, this final third of the season is going to be huge for us in terms of having that little bit of a breather that we've not had. I think McLaughlin P has put up 25 games since the beginning of November, so it's a tough slog on them. So to get a bit of time with our manager, to have a little think about different systems that we can play. It's clear that the system that was so successful at the start of the season for us has been something that Rangers have been able to figure out. I would say, especially at Ibrox, we'll be wanting to put in a good performance at Celtic Park, and they'll be up for it regardless of who the manager is or who decides to show up for them that day. It'll be a big game for us. But in the meantime, we've got some big games that we want to just keep the momentum going. And I think we've got a manager there that will make players realise how important it is and how difficult a job it is to go and win a domestic treble. So I'm not worried about the running. I'm not worried about the motivation of these players. I think everything is ticking along nicely. I think we're already starting to think about winning the potential treble. Also, we're starting to think about a transfer window as fans and starting to dream for what we can do in Europe next season as well, after what was a really successful campaign. So, no, all rosy in this front. These results will happen over the course of a season. We know that, Tino. And we just dust ourselves down and got on there.
Yeah, all fair points, Paddy. I'm going to throw in a comment from Brido of the show. He's messaged this morning, early bells. It must have been on his mind. He says, defensively, very weak throughout the game. 3 bodies marking nobody for the second goal, and Trusty has to be stronger when he does challenge. Kuhn was awful. Ida's performance was concerning. Midfield lethargic. McGregor poor and tired looking. Maeda and Jota the only pass marks. VAR involvement also very, very poor. He's feeling it this morning. I don't know if that's hangover chat, but he's obviously...
That's not a question, that's a rant.
That's just a rant. So, Brido and others will have strong feelings, and rightfully so. That's why we're all on it. We've all got strong feelings in Celtic, and some people will be making their peace with yesterday, and some will take a bit more time on it. And as I say, we'll discuss it on Monday night show. And it's all part of the fun. But the bigger picture is that for whatever played out yesterday, Celtic haven't been impacted by it, and the focus very much should be, as I say, 9 wins now from the treble, and that's got to be the way ahead for Brendan Rodgers and his players. And it starts again with Tuesday night at Aberdeen. Barry, cheers for joining us here on a Sunday morning. Just any final thoughts before we kick off for the day?
No, just want to crack on. Best way to go over the defeat is get the next game lined up as soon as possible, and that's coming on Tuesday. As I say, I think it'll be a cracking game. I think Aberdeen have been a very strong team this season, unfortunate in their run. I think that they've made some really good signings in January, so I think it's going to be a good test for us again on Tuesday night. And I do think that we'll see a lot more of a familiar Celtic as well for what we've seen yesterday.
Yeah, here's hoping, Paddy, and loads to look forward to. There's a real focus now for the rest of the season. I think there's plenty of excitement for us as fans. As I say, thanks to you for joining me here on a Sunday. Thanks to everyone who continues to join us here on the live and make the various comments. And thanks for your ongoing support of the Celtic Exchange. We'll be back tomorrow night, Monday night, with the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Remember, that's only available on Monday to subscribers of the channel. There's a link to do so in the show notes. Otherwise, it's out on general release on Tuesday morning. But until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you all again really soon.